On April 12, 1980, an unknown 21-year-old dipped his artificial leg into the Atlantic Ocean at the start of his trek towards the Pacific. After losing his right leg to cancer 3 years earlier and witnessing the suffering of children with cancer, Terry Fox decided to run a marathon a day, every day, collecting $1 from every Canadian for cancer research. By the time he arrived in Wilmot Township on July 20th, day 100 of his Marathon of Hope, Terry had become a household name. His epic journey was front-page news, and Canadians tracked his route as he ran across the nation and into our hearts. Terry said, "I just wish people would realize that anything's possible if you try. Dreams are made possible if you try." More than 4 decades later, people still remember when Terry came to Wilmot, and we all dreamed together.
The first time I saw him run, I think it was just like the same feeling everybody else had when they saw Terry run past. It was like overwhelming. Like, wow. That's not very a descriptive word, but I think there was really no words to describe how you felt.
What my role was in the Marathon of Hope in 1980, I had just joined the Canadian Cancer Society, and within 6 weeks of me becoming the public relations and fundraising director, I was asked to find out what I could do for a young man named Terry Fox, which led me on the road with Terry. From Montreal, I had spoke to him very early into his run, but from Montreal to Thunder Bay, I was with Terry, and it was the greatest experience of my life.
I was on 7/8 on the way to Stratford at Walker Road, that comes across from Bray. I was sitting in a motorhome with my husband. It was in the evening. Don't ask me why we were the only ones sitting there, because there was a lot of people that could have been there. His caravan came along, and the police escort and all that. And we sat there, and we saw him come, and he went past and down the hill and then was heading into Kitchener. And we just sat there, and we were so quiet. We just sat and watched him go by. And both of us were in tears afterwards. It was one of the most touching, memorable memories I'll ever have, and I'm just proud that I saw him there. A few years later down the road, I was in Ottawa when I worked briefly for a tour company, and it'd take all the tourists past his monument. And that's what a monument should be. And every time I took somebody past, I was in tears. It just gets to me. I guess I was just so impressed with his courage and his youth, and I thought, what an example for young people to look up to,
Well, my best recollection is that right out, like by Expressway 4, that like they weren't there at the time. Like, I'm sure he walked right down past it. There was people all over the place.
Everywhere. Yeah. Everywhere people were watching him.
Yeah.
We really didn't know a whole lot about him. We just knew he was going to do this run. He was going to come past our place. We didn't know that he was going to become as famous as what he has become. We didn't know he was that magical man.
Didn't realize
No,
what was happening.
We just knew he was doing this run. He had cancer, and we'd be out there and wave to him. And
how many years ago? 40 years ago.
42.
42
years ago.
Well, for me, he's a leader, and he's able to, or we're able to take from that it's a cancer survivor, as a cancer survivor, that we have him to thank for getting people excited and donating for the cause, and it feels good here. The people at Morningside certainly are excited about it every year, I think, and they're very, very happy to do it.
And generous.
Yeah. I'm sure they have new methods and whatever to do it now, I'm sure. Well, I was a softie back then. I was probably a wee. Yeah, that's right.
What I can tell you for a fact is that when I met him in New Brunswick, I learned his routine, and I saw that he was going to run 25 miles every day, and I became a disciple. I believed that he was going to actually do it right from the very first day I met him. So what I did was I went back to Ontario, and I just simply laid out 25 miles, 25 miles, 25 miles, so that when we came to Wilmot, he was literally 1 day behind schedule from the schedule that had been set up probably 2 months prior to it. And what he did every day was absolutely amazing. But Wilmot, I can remember, extremely hot.
So I would have been 15. So we were playing up the street, and I think it was at a time where we were starting to pay more attention to the whole Terry Fox story, because he'd been going for a while. But we were up there, we saw him jog by, and then the motorhome, the Winnebago or whatever it was, go by, and we were like, hey, I think that was Terry Fox. So we jumped on our bikes and came down here, just in time to see him going up the hill where Herb Transport is now. I think that's about how far he got by the time we got down here. Then we just kind of watched him go up over the hill. Even though we had our bikes, so we probably couldn't chase him. It's a long time ago. How did we go? Well, I kind of, I'm here today talking about it, so I guess the idea how it felt, we got to see it. So how do you express that in feelings? I don't know. It was a memorable moment. Well, of course, we remembered the greatest Canadian contest there on CBC Radio a while ago, and I think he was my pick for that one.
Well, Terry's rest break in New Dundee was at a house owned by a woman named Carolyn Beck. And more than what I can tell you about his rest break, because he slept. And the people were very considerate, because some of the places and the houses he'd stay in, there would be party going on outside while he's trying to have a nap. That wasn't the case at Carolyn's. But more important, the story about Carolyn Beck, what many people do not know was that days before I joined the run, matter of fact, the day I joined the run, the Ontario Division was not 100%, was not involved. They had not committed. They were not going to get behind Terry Fox. And it came down to a meeting in Toronto with people from across Ontario, and there was a handful of them that pushed. From what they did not see, hadn't seen Terry, they hadn't met Terry, all they've is heard about him. And Carolyn Beck was one of probably less than 10 people at that meeting who were emphatic. They stood their ground, and because of Carolyn Beck, the Ontario Division of the Canadian Cancer Society, in fact, got behind Terry Fox, and the rest was history. But without Carolyn Beck and those other people, I don't know what would have happened. I know I wouldn't have been on the run. I know whatever I contributed would not have been there, and all of the volunteers and all of the staff of the Cancer Society who very quickly got on board, that would not have been.
I was the district president of the Cancer Society at the time, and district director George Carter called early in the morning to see if we would be willing to make breakfast for the group and to see if Terry could sleep at our home. We were surprised and hurried to go for things like chocolate milk, Sugar Crisp cereal, and pineapple for pineapple pancakes that I didn't have in the house. Terry ran early in the morning before it got too hot, and he probably arrived at our home mid-morning, had breakfast, and slept for maybe 3 hours. He then returned to the spot he stopped running and finished the rest of the 26 miles in the afternoon. We had a split-level home with fairly steep carpeted stairs to the bedrooms, and when Terry came down later in the afternoon, he commented, "I hope I don't fall and break my good leg." Later in the afternoon, when the group left to continue the run, Terry thanked us for breakfast and wished my son Trevor good luck at your ball game. I was always amazed that with all he was going through, he'd remember something like that.
The people in Wilmot, like from the very small group of people in New Brunswick, the very first day I traveled with them, where there would be 3 or 4 people at the end of a concession road. It was a wide range of responses, but it was admiration, it was awe, it was emotional, and by the time we got to Wilmot, it was happening. Terry had taken off, so the traffic was bumper to bumper in both directions as he came down the road, and we had a lot of kids running with us, which led to some interesting times.
How we found out that Terry was running nearby was, I think, through the school system. So I think we first learned the Terry Fox run through the schools. And then, as far as I remember, it was mostly the radio.
Well, we had the TV would give you updates too. Once Terry hit Ontario, everybody was following him. They announced he would be running through the Petersburg intersection, and so I headed off to work early because I work with children, and Brendan and his dad went down.
From what I remember, there was a decent group of people. I think mostly people that I went to school with, but there was a good group of people by the gas station that's still there today. It was really quite clear, like it was just like anybody else that was running down the street. And if I remember correctly, I think we even ran beside him a little bit, like you see in the documentary or the other TV shows. So it's really impressive to see someone on TV that there's so much excitement for, and then to see that in real life was quite something. Even for a brief amount of time, it was probably less than 10 minutes or 15 minutes the whole time. So when I was 6 years old, when Terry Fox ran by, I wanted a shirt exactly like Terry, and it didn't exist, so my mom took me to a t-shirt shop that they make shirts, and I actually used that to run in the first Terry Fox run. So I remember at school talking about it and getting excited to learn that Terry Fox was running across Canada. At the time, no one had ever even thought of doing something like that, so it was really, outside of Superman at 6 years old, it was the next best thing to a real-life superhero. What Terry means to us now is it's bigger than Terry. For our family, it's really been a way to stay connected, because Terry Fox has become part of our family tradition. So in our family, it's Christmas and Terry Fox that we always get together for. So what it means is to be Canadian almost, right? Like Terry Fox is such an important piece of fabric of our country and our community, and then for us, our family as well.
I was 13 years old, so I'm trying to think back. I was standing actually right on the corner right there, almost where the light post is, looking this way, and I was with my sister, my parents, friends, and half the town of Petersburg was out at that time. I'm going to say there was probably 40, 50 people at the corner, both sides. Back then we called this Regional Road 12. It wasn't, we didn't have a name like that today. So we were actually watching, the cop, there was a police escort, you could see the flashing lights, and you could see him running. And he was coming towards us, and I was actually standing on the curb, and there was somebody blocking my view, so I actually stepped onto the road, and as he came towards me, he got to about 6 feet away from me, and he actually said, "Kid, you gotta move." He couldn't go around me, so I quick hopped back up on the curb, and I was kind of starstruck because, we had heard about him, and I've never seen anybody like that before, running, with one leg. So it was kind of intriguing, but he was sweating and he was working. I just wish today, back then I knew what I was witnessing. To see such a great thing happen, and it happened before our eyes, and all we did was follow along in the newspaper, but to know that it was going to be history like it is today. And I actually got to talk to him as I was running, and talked to him for, I think he asked me, you know, how did you do in school or something like that, because it was like a quick little, just a quick little, you know, conversation. You know what, I just look at the legacy that I left behind, the importance of what he had and what he was doing for cancer research, and you know, I just have the greatest respect for him, and I just think that, you know, too bad there wasn't more people like him out there doing what he can do or what he did, and he sure started a trend, I'll tell you, that set the bar very high, very high, very high.
Favorite memory of Wilmot. I referred to of the kids running along with Terry, and this only happened once, and it was 42 years later. There was one kid who would not stop running next to him, and Terry had been tripped a couple of times early on in his run, very innocently, by enthusiastic 8, 10, 12-year-old kids wanting to run with Terry, which was okay. But what we would say is, you've got to run back, you know, a distance from him. Please don't get near to him. For some reason, kids would not listen to Doug and Daryl, and I think it was the age difference. But in Wilmot, or someplace in that very close vicinity, we were at an intersection, we were at a rest break, and I had told this kid probably 5 times in every way I could, nice, angry, strict, pleading. Finally, I leaned down to him and I said, I'm calling the cops on you if you get near to him one more time. Well, what happened was, with great authority, I spun around and ran smack dab into a telephone pole. There goes authority. Thanks, Wilmot. You really were an embarrassment for me.
On September 1st, 1980, 43 days after he came to our community, Terry stopped running. When he died at the age of 22, he left us with a lifetime of memories and an unforgettable legacy. Terry wasn't a quitter, and he never gave up. He simply ran out of time. We are the time that Terry didn't have, and it's up to us, all of us, to keep his dream alive.
I've been a kid, been to school,